And then there's the question of just the natural cruelty and vicissitudes of life. And the answer there is, I think that God obscures himself. I think that if God were to appear in all of his glory to people on a regular basis, I think that would make faith, you wouldn't need it. There'd be no such thing as faith.
All Ben has done here, in actuality, is demonstrate his own philosophical ignorance. It's just another way of massaging the definition of God such that his alarming absence becomes more palatable for those who desperately want to clutch onto their belief in the divine.
If you ever try to bullshit me like that again, I will rip off your arms.
Thank you to my patrons and YouTube channel members. Please consider joining our community today. Simply click the link in the description or tap the join button below. Thank you. Hey everybody, Dara McGrath here, aka Magic Skeptic, and you're all very welcome to another episode of the most annoying religious people. Up for today is political commentator Ben Shapiro. And yes, you're right, Ben has featured in this series in the past, but some people frustrate me so much that in my view, they deserve to feature more than once. And nowhere does that apply more strongly than in the case of Ben Shapiro. Speaking of which, you might want to sit down before we dive into this Ben Shapiro clip, because Ben is about to offer his thoughts on the problem of evil. Ben is asked in an interview how evil and suffering could exist in this world given the fact that he believes in God. And his response is absolutely ridiculous. So let's not delay any further and dive right in. I give you Ben Shapiro.
Why does God allow cruelty and suffering in the world? One of the tough questions.
So we're going deep here. There's two types of cruelty and suffering. So if we're talking about human cruelty and suffering, because God does not intervene to prevent people from exercising their free will, because to do so would be to deprive human beings of the choice that makes them human. Right? This is the sin of the Garden of Eden, basically, is that God could make you an angel, in which case you wouldn't have the choice to do the wrong thing. But so long as we are going to allow for cause and effect in a universe shaped by your choice, cruelty and evil are going to exist.
Ah, the free will defense. A classic, but still, nevertheless, a dud. So according to Ben Shapiro, God allows evil because doing so preserves our free will.
God does not intervene to prevent people from exercising their free will.
After all, if God intervened every time someone attempted an immoral action, then we'd have no freedom. We'd be prisoners of the good, as opposed to being free practitioners of the good, so to speak. Equally, if God created us such that we could only perform good deeds, created us as angels, as Ben puts it,
God could make you an angel, in which case you wouldn't have the choice to do the wrong thing.
Then we'd still, nevertheless, be unfree, only being capable of good deeds, thus reducing us to little more than moral automatons. In short, God gave us free will because free will is good in and of itself. And the price of giving us this gift of free will is the capacity to do evil. Ergo, evil exists. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is garbage. Not least because Ben's whole point relies on the assumption that free will exists, itself a contentious belief. But I'm going to go ahead and grant this for the sake of discussion. And despite this generous concession on my part, Ben's whole argument is still garbage. And here's why. Ben's point assumes that evil actions are a necessary accompaniment of free will. But couldn't God have given us the kind of free will whereby moral evil is impossible, and yet we're still free? Some of you may have a knee-jerk reaction to this proposal and exclaim that I've uttered a contradiction. After all, how could humanity be considered, quote-unquote, free if moral evil is impossible? Thus, the suggestion to create humans such that they always freely choose the good is incoherent. But is it though? Is it incoherent? I think not. I submit to you that we would still be free in a world where evil is impossible, because we could still freely choose from amongst the good options. Sure, the range of possible actions would be more limited given the removal of the evil options, but the limiting of options doesn't render an individual unfree now, does it? By way of analogy, if Big Macs, McFlurries, and McNuggets are sold out at McDonald's, I still have free will because I can choose from amongst the remaining options, such as double cheeseburgers, fries, apple pies, etc. How preposterous it would be to claim that McDonald's has robbed me of my free will because 50% of their menu is unavailable on a given day. Clearly, individuals can still freely choose from amongst the remaining options. In other words, the removal of some options from the possibility space does not entail determinism. And so too it is the case with the moral menu. Removing the evil options does not render an individual unfree, nor does the removal of said options entail determinism. And here's the thing. There's already a whole host of limitations built into the fabric of reality, yet theists like Ben Shapiro here will insist that we still have free will. For example, we can't fly. Our memories are limited. We can't run beyond a certain maximal speed. Our vision is poor at night, etc. These limitations definitionally reduce our behavioral options. In other words, humanity would have been, quote, more free had we been gifted, to take one example, the biological capability of flight. For then we could choose to fly to work in addition to walking, running, driving, and what have you. But hang on a minute. Following Ben Shapiro's logic, wouldn't these behavioral limitations mean that we don't have free will? Wouldn't Ben be duty-bound to conclude that we're not free given that our options have been curtailed? Remember, Ben's whole point is that removing behavioral options is tantamount to removing free will. So wouldn't removing the behavioral option of flight entail the same conclusion? And yet, despite our inability to fly unaided by technology and a whole host of other limitations, some of which I've enumerated already, Mr. Shapiro nevertheless believes that we have free will. To take another example, the fact that I cannot run 100 miles per hour doesn't mean I'm not free to run. It's simply the case that the possibility space is limited. But despite the limitations, I can still freely choose to run 3 miles per hour, or 4 miles per hour, or 3.5 miles per hour, etc. And the same is true for morality. God could have created us in such a manner that murder, rape, and theft were impossible, thereby limiting the possibility space of human actions. And even then, we could still freely choose from amongst all the remaining good options, such as charity, volunteering at a soup kitchen, donating clothing, helping the elderly, etc. So it seems to me that Ben Shapiro has something of a dilemma on his hands. Option A entails Ben sticking to his guns and insisting that the removal of evil from our behavioral options is tantamount to removing free will. The bitter pill here is that Ben would have to concede that we don't have free will to begin with. For, as I've already demonstrated, there are in fact a plethora of behavioral limitations built into our biology and indeed built into the very fabric of reality itself. And let's face it, if we don't have free will to begin with, then there can't be a free will defense now, can there? Option B entails Ben biting the bullet and accepting that free will is compatible with behavioral limitations, thereby protecting his belief that we as humans, despite our behavioral limitations, can indeed be said to have free will. But the bitter pill here is just as bad. For if Ben accepts that free will is compatible with behavioral limitations, then he has in fact conceded that the free will defense is folly. For how can free will serve as an explanation for moral evil when free will is compatible with behavioral limitations? Limitations that could easily include immoral actions. Or, to put it another way, God could have easily created humans who are both free and only do good deeds. To summarize, Ben doesn't get to pin evil on free will, because God could have created us with the kind of free will whereby evil actions are impossible. The fact that God didn't avail himself of this obviously better option makes evil his fault, not the fault of free will, or, by extension, not the fault of humanity. Sorry, Ben, try again.
And then there's the question of just the natural cruelty and vicissitudes of life. And the answer there is, I think that God obscures himself. I think that if God were to appear in all of his glory to people on a regular basis, I think that it would make faith, you wouldn't need it. There'd be no such thing as faith, right? It would just be reality, right? Nobody has to prove to you that the sun rises every day. But if God is to allow us the choice to believe in him, which is the ultimate choice from a religious point of view, then he's going to have to obscure himself behind tragedy and horror and all those other things. I mean, this is a fairly well-known Kabbalistic concept called Tzimtzum in Judaism, which is the idea that when God created the universe, he sort of withdrew in order to make space for all of these things to happen.
After having failed to explain the coexistence of moral evil with his God, Ben then turns his attention to natural evil. Theists tend to find this kind of evil more difficult to explain away, because there's no obvious non-circuitous route to pin it on humanity. I mean, some theists will blame natural evil on humanity insofar as Adam and Eve are responsible for the fall, the very event which resulted in humanity being banished to this mortal coil. In other words, some theists will try to pin natural evil, in addition to moral evil, on humanity. Needless to say, this is an absolutely ridiculous way of dealing with the phenomenon of natural evil, but I'm not going to deal with that point here. Not least because this isn't the response that Ben Shapiro is going with. That said, if you're interested in hearing my response to the fall narrative and its alleged role in producing natural evil, then check out my video on yet another Daily Wire darling, namely Matt Walsh. Spoiler alert, in that video, yes, Matt Walsh does in fact blame the presence of natural evil in this world on Adam and Eve, and he does so with a straight face. Good grief. But I digress. As you've seen, the next reason Ben offers as to why God allows evil is because he wants to, quote-unquote, obscure himself.
And the answer there is, I think that God obscures himself.
This is referred to as epistemic distance in the literature, that being a distance of knowledge. So God intentionally obscures or hides himself, remaining at an epistemic distance so that our knowledge of his existence remains uncertain. For if God revealed himself unambiguously, our moral freedom would be removed, as would our choice to freely come to believe in God. As Ben puts it,
if God is to allow us the choice to believe in him, which is the ultimate choice from a religious point of view, then he's going to have to obscure himself behind tragedy and horror and...
The first thought that occurs to me on this point is how utterly ad hoc it is. Truthfully, it sounds to me like a just so story, invented in order to explain away the lack of evidence for God. Hey Ben, why doesn't God intervene to save people from earthquakes, tsunamis, and other natural disasters?
Oh, it's simple, God is more interested in hiding than helping people, didn't you know?
So you mean to tell me that God would prefer to maintain his status as hide-and-seek champion as opposed to saving drowning children?
Exactly, yeah. You see, if God showed himself unambiguously, then our choice to come to believe in him freely would be sacrificed, and God is more interested in preserving that choice than he is in saving lives.
Okay, but doesn't God want all of us to come to believe in him in the first place?
Yes, that's right. God wants all of us to come to believe in him, but he wants us to do so without having a solid reason. And this is so important to him that he lets people die in the name of it.
Gotcha. So God prioritizes irrationality over compassion, right?
No, wait, no, I didn't say that. I meant to, but, epistemic distance and free will, and...
I'm really sorry about that digression. I just couldn't help myself. I've gotten it out of my system now, folks, so we can move on. So to repeat, do you see how ad hoc this is? The reason God doesn't help us out is because he doesn't want us to see him. This reminds me of the parable of the gardener, where any attempt to falsify God is thwarted by redefining what God is in order to prevent falsification. And make no mistake, this is precisely what Ben is doing here. But don't take my word for it. What follows is a presentation of the parable of the gardener so that you can see how it epitomizes Ben Shapiro's approach here. Have a listen. Once upon a time, two explorers came upon a clearing in the jungle. In the clearing were growing many flowers and many weeds. One explorer says, "Some gardener must tend this plot." The other disagrees. There is no gardener. So they pitch their tents and set a watch. No gardener is ever seen, but perhaps he is an invisible gardener. So they set up a barbed wire fence. They electrify it. They patrol with bloodhounds, for they remember how H.G. Wells' Invisible Man could be both smelt and touched, though he could not be seen. but no shrieks ever suggest that some intruder has received the shock. No movements of the wire ever betray an invisible climber. The bloodhounds never give cry. Yet still the believer is not convinced. But there is a gardener, invisible, intangible, insensible to electric shocks. A gardener who has no scent and makes no sound. A gardener who comes secretly to look after the garden which he loves. At last the skeptic despairs, but what remains of your original assertion? Just how does what you call an invisible, intangible, eternally elusive gardener differ from an imaginary gardener, or even from no gardener at all? Tell me Ben Shapiro is not doing exactly the same thing that the theist does in this parable. You see, Ben is merely massaging his description of God in order to compensate for his obvious absence, but he dresses it up in the language of agency and intention. Oh, God wants to obscure himself in order that we can come to believe in him freely.
If God is to allow us the choice to believe in him, which is the ultimate choice from a religious point of view, then he's going to have to obscure himself behind tragedy and horror. And
make no mistake, this is principally no different to describing God as invisible, silent, or intangible. It's just another way of massaging the definition of God such that his alarming absence becomes more palatable for those who desperately want to clutch onto their belief in the divine. In short, this kind of reasoning is ad hoc in the extreme, and such defenses are not persuasive, nor are they theoretically virtuous. So Ben can shout from the rooftops that God hides himself in order that we come to believe in him freely, or because revealing himself unambiguously would rob us of our moral freedom, but such rejoinders are difficult to take seriously, not to mention the problems that this creates for Ben's theology. Consider the following. These claims tie Ben to the uncomfortable notion that God committed a moral wrong against all those in the Bible to whom he revealed himself unambiguously. Wouldn't Ben be duty-bound to conclude that such individuals were robbed of their freedom? For when God revealed himself to these individuals, their behavior was altered, and their ability to come to believe in God freely was sacrificed. It seems to me that Ben has only two options here. Either God revealing himself is immoral because it robs individuals of their freedom to come to believe in him on their own, in which case God acted immorally when he revealed himself to numerous individuals in the Bible, or God revealing himself is moral, in which case Ben's whole point is defeated because God could reveal himself to us and even save us from natural disasters, but he doesn't. In which case, this option renders God an immoral monster as well. Pick your poison, Ben. But this epistemic distance point is worse still. Consider the fact that God intervenes countless times throughout the Bible. The flood, plagues, the burning bush, miracles, etc. I don't hear theists complaining about how certain individuals' freedom was violated by these events, despite the fact that epistemic distance was removed. How dare God interfere with our freedom to come and believe in him freely by parting the Red Sea and saving the Jews? Said no theist ever. So is Ben going to concede that God acted immorally in all of these cases? Did God rob Moses of his ability to freely believe in him by manifesting unambiguously? Perhaps I'll ask Ben these questions myself one day, but for now, consider me deeply underwhelmed. It's not clear that Ben has done or said anything here that even approximates a persuasive or reasonable explanation for the problem of evil. All Ben has done here, in actuality, is demonstrate his own philosophical ignorance. Although, to be fair, and coming full circle, he has actually accomplished another feat, annoying the f***ing shit out of me.